would like to welcome my listeners back to the Boss Bitch Rising podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest because he is not only one of my very close friends, but he is also my shaman and an extremely connected spiritual being. And he recently published a book that I have been incorporating into my morning routine and has literally been just like this beautiful blessing to my day. The book really combines spirituality with science and facts of history and really just framing it all around the four elements. We have water, fire, earth, and air, and how we as human beings are made up of each of these elements. And it's been a beautiful read. I haven't gotten through the book quite yet because I'm just taking piece by piece, but I was so inspired by the book that I wanted to connect with Marcus and really share this beautiful experience with all of you, because that's really what this book is an experience. So Marcus, thank you so much for being here with me today. If you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit more to our listeners, and we'll go from there.
That's so beautiful. I don't think I have much more to add. That was so beautiful what you just said, my dear. Um, I'm originally from Sweden, if anybody wonders about an accent that pops up here and there. And then I live in LA. I've been back and forth between Sweden and LA a few times. And I spent 12 years in California, 7 years back home in Sweden, and then now 4 years back here. I've lived in Mammoth for parts of that time, a total of 6 years in Mammoth. And in Mammoth, you get very connected to nature. And you asked me earlier where the inspiration from the book came from. And the thing is, last year I was up hiking in the mountains, and my shamanic journey, I've been on it, of course, for a very long time, but it was more of a broader healing journey than specifically shamanic. And then about a year and a half ago, this lady, a shaman teacher, took me under her wing and was told by her tribe to initiate me into the spiritual tribe that she's a part of. And then I was initiated into that during a journey, and I kind of started walking that walk. And it's been, of course, an unbelievably life-changing experience. And of course, not always easy, but it's been amazing. So, and I'm very grateful that you and I are connected, because you're such a beautiful inspiration and part of my life. So I'm happy for that. Now, the book came about because I was up hiking in the mountains. I love being in the mountains. I love being outside. I love nature in general. And if you don't love nature, try it. Give it a shot and see what happens, right? Because when we get out there and we actually immerse ourselves into the elements, into nature, into the woods, into the mountains, into the desert, into the ocean, we actually realize humanity's part, that we are part of nature, that we intrinsically we are nature, and we are based, we are from nature, right? And we need to remember that when we live in these cities that we live in so much concrete, and we spend our days in the car, and everything is so not nature oriented that many people from the cities are afraid of nature. And that's a part of why we can treat Earth Mother so poorly. That's part of why the big corporations are not thinking that a part of the equation needs to be, are we actually helping the earth? Because right now, the only equation they care about is how much profit they make, not if we help or not, or if we help or don't help Earth. Yeah. And it's so much more important that we help the earth to survive. Earth Mother, it's our home. It's the only home we have. And it's been a dear question for mine, like a very close thought in me for a long time. But last year on this hike in the mountains, I was like up high on 10,000 feet, and I was sitting up there, and I realized I need to do a meditation. I need to sit here, and I felt like I want to ask a question. And I wanted to ask the question: how does rocks carry consciousness? Like, because what the hell? How does a rock? Why do the Native Americans? Why do spiritual teachers say that rocks are conscious? And when I was sitting up there, the answer that came to me, and because it was a two-part question. One was, how are rocks conscious? And two, what makes humans special? Because on some level on one level we're very special, and on one level we're absolutely not different than any of the other four-legged or two-legged animals on our planet. And I wanted to see deeper into that. So I asked a question when I was sitting in meditation, and what came up was both the idea of how rocks carry consciousness on so many levels, but from the human perspective of 80 years being a long lifetime, we don't really know if a rock is a rock, even like a rock, right? That I found in Mammoth, right? Even a piece of rock like this has been around for probably maybe a few million years or more, right?
It's hard to
So
even consider, right?
it's
Like,
really tricky.
yeah. Like thinking that something's been around that massive amount of time. And although a rock might not have eyes like me or you or most other beings that we are familiar with, or creatures that we're familiar with, but how much has this rock seen or experienced in its lifetime?
There you go. What has this rock witnessed
Yeah.
from the journey from being a part of a big mountain and then having ice ages and rain and snow and winter and break it down, erode the mountain down into rocks? They fall down, they become, and then they move across our world, right? So we even like I have some rocks that are from home in Sweden, from the beach in Sweden, and when I pick those up, I realize I can sometimes even feel the ocean. I can feel the seagulls flying around. I can feel the salt and the wind, and because there's an imprint even in the rock, right, of where it's been energetically. There's an imprint, and like you said, what has this rock seen in these tens of thousands of thousands of thousands of years that it's been around? And here we are. I'm like, oh, I'm 49 years old. I'm almost 50. That's a long time to be alive. It's like, no, it's not. It's barely any time to be alive compared to either a rock or Earth Mother.
Yeah.
And what I think we fail to see is that just like, so you have, like, this is an example in the book too, right? But I want to bring it up, right? Like a mayfly, which is a little insect that lives for about 1 or 2 or 3 days from like in the fully grown adult stage. It can't, it's hard for us to see that a mayfly can that comprehend a whole life for a human. Can it comprehend a whole human's life as in 80 years, right? It's only alive for a few days.
Yeah.
And most likely it can't. If it hears you sing a song, because it flies right by you, it'll hear you go, whoa, but it doesn't hear your song, right? So for these rocks, they may have a vibration that we never ever are aware of, because they might be saying, like for Earth Mother, a breath, one breath is pretty much equal to 1 year, right? It's a cycle.
Yeah.
And we can compare that with our breath. You breathe in, that's like bringing in new life into the body. Everything in the body gets kind of comes alive and becomes like, it feels good, right? It's springtime for the body. And then there's a little pause in the middle of the breath. That's summertime when everything simmers, everything hangs out. Then there's an out breath. Well, that's fall, and everything slows down. And we breathe out the bad stuff. And then there's a pause at the bottom of the breath. That's winter. And then it comes back around into spring, right? Well, so that's how Earth Mother has a whole life. And for us, like, we can't comprehend, I believe we can't comprehend all that's going on around us because our time frame is so different. Our perception of 80 years being a long time is 80 breaths for Earth Mother. You take, I don't know how many hundreds of breaths in one day.
Yeah.
Like, so our perception of time is so very different. So what's going on? So this rock might have a song going on, but I have no idea because my ears are not attuned to that specific vibration that the rock is giving out.
That's a beautiful way to describe, maybe give it a better perspective of where we stand in the timeline of things, and using the breath as, that analogy of our breath is like a season on earth. And I would say for any of my listeners that know me and just my personality and my little quirks, they know that I love rocks. Marcus knows I love rocks. We went on a camping trip and like we drove by this rock that I swear to you, it called my name. And I like came to a screeching halt on this dirt road, and I had to like backtrack a couple steps to grab this rock, which this rock still hangs out in my car. I hang out with this rock quite often. But I've actually taken this rock hiking with me. Like bringing the rock into my house doesn't quite feel right. And I like bringing this rock back out into nature. And I keep asking the rock, like, I know you like being outside, but whenever you're ready for me to release you, let me know. And I know that might sound a little crazy, right? To somebody who might not feel the same connection to rocks specifically that I do. But if we slow down a lot, right, and connect in back with our breath and connect in with nature, we'll begin to feel things that we're so desensitized to feeling or distracted by other things like technology and whatever else, the chaos of our city lives. When we learn to slow down and connect back in with our core, and then connecting into the core of the earth, we can start to notice and feel, receive, become more receptive to a lot of the energy, the vibration, and the conscious energy that's constantly surrounding us at all times. Maybe we're just not quite attuned to it because we're tuned to other things like our phones or, stress at work or whatever else that we've got going on in our metropolitan lifestyle.
And
Marcus,
funny enough, this rock actually comes from our camping trip. I just realized that. I picked it up when I went out there. Yeah. So, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Like there are so many levels when we realize, so we think even studying, going to university, spending 4 to 6 to 8 years in school, studying whatever we're studying, or 2 years. Like I studied 2 years at the university, but like you think that's a lot of time. You think but then you realize if you really think about how the natives in any country, indigenous people, were immersed in nature. They live their whole lives in nature. So they get to know, innately they get to know the plants, the trees, the rocks, the fish, the deer, the bison. They sit with it because they spend their time in it, right? So then they are able to pick up on things like you and I, we can get through our phones really easily. We can get through and computers and all that because we spend time with it. On a deep level, when we do connect back, that's what what we got in the book basically is about connecting back home. It is about coming back into and realizing that on so many levels we consist of the 4 elements, and like you said, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's energetic. Like everything you touch, everything you eat, everything that we grab comes as an element out of Earth Mother. And that's period. Because everything on our planet comes from Earth originally. Even the stuff we think we make in a lab is still made with parts from Earth Mother. Because nothing on Earth exists that wasn't from Earth originally, right?
absolutely.
So, and we don't think about that. We don't connect with what we put in our system. We don't connect any longer, and humans have connected for a long time. So this disconnect that we have is part of why we get stressed out, why we have ADHD things going on, why we not, because there's a saying, like we can call it anchoring in. That's anchoring into yourself, anchoring into your body, anchoring into your energy. And as you anchor your body into Earth Mother, one simple exercise is just to watch yourself grow roots into Earth Mother in meditation, and you can feel a shift happening in your root chakra and sometimes into the sacral chakra. And when we do that, we start to feel stronger in life. We feel safer. We feel like we have more power. Because one of the things, the 4 elements, like I said, so we're on one quick way to look at it. With Earth, we eat carbon. We eat different kinds of food that contains carbon, that contains things that help our body to get nutrients. Even in the soil, you look at what's in the soil, and you look at that. Soil is basically organic matter, which is dead trees, dead animals, dead dinosaurs, dead whatever, that and then leaves, and then rocks that have decomposed, that are eroded. And so the soil contains all these different nutrients that the greenery needs to grow. Any plant we put a seed in, it needs these different vitamins and minerals to grow. And it comes out of Earth Mother. The minerals that you eat when you take your shakes in the morning, or you take your added vitamins, added minerals, many of them are broken down rocks. Many of them are already in Earth Mother, but our soils are kind of depleted nowadays, so we don't get as much out of it, right? So, but Earth, we are absolutely made of Earth. That's easy to see, dust to dust, right?
Right.
And water is easy to see. We drink a lot of water. We're made up, 70 to 80% of our body contains water, or is water. Every cell of our body needs it to survive. And we can also see the spiritual aspect of water, how it helps to cleanse us, helps to clear our energy, and also clear an area. Or we can use sacred water, which they've been using for thousands of years too, right? And we got air. Try to live without breathing. See how that works out. We really need air. We're made up of air as well. It brings in life-giving energy every breath. And fire, the way I interpret it, is that all our, on different levels, but fire is electricity as well. Like in our body, it works as electricity because it's energy. When you feel the energy, so you're sitting by a campfire, you get warm. If you feel your body energy, you can feel the heat, you can feel life, you can feel how your whole body is just, if you get angry, right? Remember the feeling of being, right? There's like a fire inside of you.
Yeah.
That's energy going, so all of those, that's how I interpret that we are made up of the four elements. And we also, when we go into like, spiritually speaking, fire is a transformational element. Fire takes a piece of wood and it turns it into a gas, different gases and other forms, right? Well, humans are kind of like a fire on Earth Mother. And in some ways it's horrible, and in some ways it's actually not as horrible. Right. We kind of got to remember that if we shift into a more positive energy, if humans can shift more in an earth-connected, earth-centered living, and more of a lifestyle that's coherent with life, or whatever the word would be. Yeah, I guess coherent would work. Healthy for Earth. Then we can add a lot.
Absolutely. And something that I keep thinking, when we're talking about fire too, is being in California, we experience wildfires all the time. And it seems like they're becoming, like, our wildfire season becomes more frequent and longer over the years. It just seems like it's just happening more and more often. But fire can be extremely destructive, right? But if you take a look at that same landscape 6 months after a fire or a year after the fire, how different seeds have started to sprout and things are starting to grow. And it's almost always more lush in that specific area than it was prior to the fire. And so in some senses, like, yes, it's unfortunate to have buildings or possibly even people and animals destroyed in the fire or become victims of the fire. But on the other end, it also breeds so much life as well. And so it's part of that birth and death process in life too, where it's like the seasons of transformation, like you said.
And it's beautiful, right? Because in that sense, when humans, if we can turn into something helpful for our Earth, we actually will do something very beautiful. But it is a matter of raising our awareness around it or not, and being willing to let go of old paradigms, being willing to let go of the idea that we have to do it this way, because it's fear-based, right? The system we're in is very fear-based. There's a lack in everything. When it comes to money, when it comes to the stock market, when it comes to the industry, they stay in their frame of mind because they're afraid of lacking of power, lacking of money, lacking security. And in reality, that fear is only human based. We project future, and a negative one.
Yeah. I mean, I even think when you said what you just said, I even think about back to the time when I was homeless. Even being homeless, I still had enough that I needed in that moment to still survive. I didn't die. It was, quite literally a miserable experience, but that was only because I was less comfortable than what I was used to being, but I still had meals every single day. I still had some safety and some shelter and a shower at the end of most days. And I still was able to keep my good old cell phone charged and in contact with, people in my life. And even though it wasn't a very pleasant experience, I was still always provided for in that experience.
Yeah.
So being that we live in such a consumerist life and society, when we learn again to just slow down and connect in back into our core, and be grateful for all that we currently have, we can see that we really don't need anything more.
Mhm.
We just want more, which is okay to want more, right? But understanding the reasons why,
Yeah.
and in discovering the reasons why, searching for deeper truth within yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's where like spiritual growth comes in, right? Because we almost always are living from a lack. Like our modern society and the way we've been raised is that happiness is money, happiness is things, and when we start getting the things, start getting the money, and realize we're still not happy, or if we're living in a lot of stress and we think relationships might be happy, healthy, or happiness, any one of those things that then are taken away because we were programmed a little bit off and we're looking for happiness in the wrong places, we end up falling pretty flat on our butts because of that, right? And then, but that's where the big learning lessons start. And as we can see, how can I be a part of this instead of just thinking of how can I take? How can I be a part of this? How can I become a healthy part of the whole system? Um, you know, and I think the more we move in that direction, I think the healthier we're gonna turn out. Yeah.
Coming back to the truth that is you, and knowing that although sometimes we feel like just this minuscule little cell on this bigger organism called Earth, right? That maybe our one little voice or our one little life doesn't actually matter. But when we start to connect back in with ourselves and find our truth and feel the oneness that we are with Earth Mother, with other beings and creatures on Earth, then we can actually feel more connected, not only to ourselves, but to literally every type of consciousness and vibration that there is, knowing that we have the capacity to increase our conscious level and increase our vibration, or we can also choose to decrease those things as well.
Yes.
And what are we doing? Because that's a lot of power and responsibility. Right? If we choose to do good things with it, that too is also a lot of power and responsibility, maybe a different type than what we've been conditioned in modern America to think we should want or should have. But the more people that understand the power of learning, everything that's in your book, and then really kind of integrating this into different practices within your life, getting out in nature more, connecting with more spiritual beings who are open to expanding their capacity and helping to transform the lives of other people. This can help to just elevate, the collective consciousness of the whole world.
Yeah. That's the whole.
Yeah. Hopefully one day change for the better how we're treating our home and our environment.
Yeah. Well, one way to look at that, right? Like if we look at how you go home to somebody's house, right? You actually told me one story about your homeless period where you lived in a place that was really like a construction site that was pretty damn horrible. Like as in it wasn't very clean and stuff like that. Well, if you think about you go and visit a friend or you have somebody over, you want to impress them, you're going to clean up your house. right? Or if you go to a friend's house and it looks really, really, really horrible, you're like, oh God, that poor person, something's not going on. Something's wrong with them. They must not be feeling well, right? Because, one sign of somebody who's either depressed or a hoarder or something is tons of garbage everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, what are we doing to Earth Mother, which is our home as a planet, as a species, as a group? And that's what we're doing, right? So we're like, we are really on a if you look at the humanity as a bigger, from as an individual, we're not doing good,
Yeah.
because
And
we're
it's a process. Like Marcus and I know each other through a mutual friend, and she is just such a special person, Danica. She's my combo practitioner and a longtime friend of mine as well. And she has taught me so much about so many different things. Being more sustainable is one thing that I'm very grateful that she's taught me in our relationship. Like, she is my go-to person if I have any questions about anything, because she takes pride and is passionate about at least decreasing her individual footprint
yeah,
and sustainability on Earth.
yeah,
And, when we look at it like that, if I do my part, and not only is it going to be healthier for me as a whole to be more sustainable, because we're not using a bunch of chemicals, we're not using a bunch of plastic, and all of that is known to cause cancer, disease, pollution, whatever else.
yeah.
If we're just decreasing our one footprint, not only is our life going to be better, but we're making an impact more than we actually believe we are.
That's the thing. Yes, yes.
So we might feel like, oh, what does it matter? My one say so here doesn't really mean anything. My one vote, my one action doesn't mean anything here. But when you actively try to create change within your life, and you're committed and dedicated to those changes, over time, that actually has a bigger impact, right?
Yep.
It's just like, I relate a lot of things back to my health and wellness knowledge, where if you want to lose 1 pound of fat, you're not going to necessarily do that in one day in a sustainable way. You're
Right.
going to have to make certain lifestyle changes, exercise more, eat differently, consume more water, meditate more so you're less stressed out, and then make other lifestyle changes that are in line with this end goal. But knowing that you're in it for the long term, it's not going to be a quick fix, because can you reach the goal of the quick fix? Of course you can. But is it sustainable? Probably not. So really just slowly integrating those lifestyle changes, and finding alignment, like your truth in those things too, not just doing it to do it, but do it because you understand the meaning. And I feel like that's what this book helps to teach the readers, is through science and spirituality and history and all of these things perfectly kind of intertwined together to guide you into deeper connection with yourself and the world.
That's so sweet of you. Thank you for saying that. That's
It's been an
amazing.
awesome read. I, have my morning routine practice where every day, at least, usually in the morning, but every day I try to spend at least an hour just kind of by myself, disconnected from my phone, not talking to people. Just sometimes I'll throw music on, sometimes I'll just do it in complete silence. And I have several different books that I'll read out of. I'll journal, I'll meditate. I have a prayer practice that I do. And this has been just a beautiful read, kind of going through it and then taking a couple moments after reading a chapter and reflecting on, okay, how does this resonate with me? What were some of the key points that I'm taking away? And I've been sharing some of it on social media too. Just there's gems in this book of just insight, knowledge, facts, everything you need is in this one place. And it's an easy read too, which is also like, how can you beat this?
Thank you for saying all that. I mean, I attempted to make it an easy read. It's really tricky to know how what language you should use when you write a thing like this, and how heavy is it going to be for the reader? How much do you like? Is it too hard? Is it too easy? And I find, at least some of the feedback I get some. I mean, I get amazing feedback, like from you and from other people, And some people who have read like a million spiritual books, they're like, yeah, this is kind of a good introduction. And it's sort of like, but then there are gems for them too, right?
Right.
But I kind of like that this is a book where my intention is to like make it a little more accessible for fairly normal people. Like, so we kind of start, it's not a, you don't have to be like, I mean, it's a good read for like people who are immersed in the spiritual world as well. But it's really a good read, I think, if you are a little more newer in that path and you kind of want to get a little more into like, what the hell does this mean? And because it does talk about trauma and stuff like that as well, how we can help heal, and what breath and creating space in the body and all of those things that are important for the individual healing. Because like you kind of touched on that just now, like how we got to have individual healing in order to have communal healing. So every one of us need to find our inner path. How do I heal me? How do I start healing me? What do I do in order to help each other, right? In order to help somebody else heal, I first have to heal myself. And I'm sure you're like me, and I'm sure you might have talked about this before, I don't know. But you know, I used to think when I was on the airplane and that sign said, you know, put the mask on yourself first, I was like, no freaking way am I putting it on myself first. I'm going to save the child right next to me, or whoever is there next to me. And then after doing my own healing work and realizing that, oh, I can't save anybody else if I haven't saved myself.
Yeah.
Like I can't, if I don't put the mask on me, like I may not have a chance to put the mask on the kid. And guess what? Then both people died.
Yep.
Because I didn't heal myself first, you know? And of course, it's been a long journey to get to that space, but it's been beautiful as well. I was going to say one more thing about the book that has a little bit to do with on an individual level. You said that thing that I'm just one cell. I'm just one cell on Earth Mother, right? And it's a pretty interesting thought. Like, first of all, we look at our body, you look at your hand. One of the cool thoughts is, did I make this hand? Did I make it? Or
Right.
was it made by life itself?
Yeah.
So this is not really even my body. I'm just a part of this, right? It was made by something else. I didn't make my body. I didn't put together. I don't know how to make a finger. You know what I mean?
Does it grow back if you cut it off?
Right. Like, I mean, but you know what I mean? Like, even though we can make things in the laboratory, I wouldn't know. And I bet you most people wouldn't know how to make a human body.
Yeah.
Much less, and even like if you look at a feather, if I find a feather in nature and I hold it up and I look at the perfection of that feather, and I realize both the individual feather is perfect, it's put in a perfect place in the bird so it can fly perfectly for what the bird does. Like, that kind of creation and perfection is way beyond any mental capacity of a human being.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like it brings a bit of humility and like grace into the picture. But one level to look at it too is like, so we have a bunch of cells. You have a bunch of cells on your hand or in your body. We have billions of cells on our body. And then we realize that on one hand, I have a bunch of cells over here. I have a bunch of cells over here. All of them are connected through this body, but they may not be aware of it because they're just hanging out over here. And if one of those cells over here gets like, okay, I'm a bad mofo, I'm gonna do this or that, and it starts doing its own thing, it may create cancer over here, and that cancer might affect the whole rest of the body from that cell thinking that whatever the cell does over here, it doesn't, do anything, right? So interestingly enough, I find that we are a little bit like that in some levels, right? We don't understand that, like, even energetically, if you raise your energy vibration, you can affect your whole area where you live. You can affect people that you run into that just walk by you. They feel better because it's a little bit like you're raising the temperature in a room or in the water. People will feel it. Fish will feel if it's warmer right there.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Just put a study actually that was done in the 1980s in Harlem. I put this study into the course, the certification course that I'm writing about the human energy field and how, we all have conscious energy, and it's something that we are actually very attuned to, right? Like you hear people say good vibes, bad vibes, and they might not necessarily know consciously what they're talking about, but they're having a feeling in their body about, I don't know why I like this person. Like I don't know them, but I'm just really drawn to them. Or somebody comes in the room and the energy of the room changes and it's like sticky or icky kind of energy. And you're just like, I don't know what it is about that person, but I just don't like them. And it's maybe not that you don't like the individual, but something about their energy feels really off. And on a very subconscious level, you're able to sense and pick that up. And our bodies are a barometer, essentially constantly sensing and inputting energy into our environment and also taking away the energy or receiving the energy of our environment. And we're sensing it. And our energy can affect our environment just like we can be affected, right? And highly sensitive people or intuitive empaths are always, very affected by the energies of people and places and even things. But in my certification course, I put in a study that was done in the 1980s in Harlem. And it was a group of people, just common people, that every day at 9 a.m., they would do 10 minutes of intention meditation, where they would intend that today is a beautiful day in my neighborhood. It's a friendly interaction with every person that I come into contact with. There is going to be safety and love in every exchange that I encounter today. And so that was the intention. And over, I think it was a 3-month period of time, this intention of about 20 to 30 people was happening in this neighborhood. The crime rate during this period of time decreased and was at an all-time low in 9 years. Just from doing this very intentional meditation that the rest of the neighborhood had no idea was going on. But if that can decrease crime rate where people don't even, it's like, are we telepathic? Like, can we read minds and not know it? And in some sense, yeah, I guess we can read energy though.
We can read minds, we just don't know it.
Yeah.
We don't know what to listen for. So a lot like, we look at the phone, you look at your phone, right? And you're like, yeah, I got Wi-Fi. Oh, I got no signal right now. Okay, damn it. And you think that, well, now you got signal again, right? You're like, wow, I'm great, but you can't see that signal at all.
Yeah.
You just know it's there because you can see the bars.
Right.
What if we actually trained ourselves and listened enough that we actually pick up, oh, this person is kind of thinking of me. Okay. Well, I'm thinking of them and I'm thinking, okay. And, if you look at both very deep spiritual teachers, they've been talking about this for a long time. And, a lot of the teachings around Jesus and all of that stuff, a lot of what we call miracles, according to Indian gurus, is kind of not completely daily work, but it is stuff that they go through often. Yes. So some of the stuff that very highly advanced spiritual people can do is supernatural from a regular societal point of view. But as you start to open up for the idea, so if you, like you just said, we all have an energy field. We all have this bubble of energy around us, and it's several layers of energy. And with your intention, with your thought, a thought is energy as well. It's a movement of energy that creates a ripple effect through your energy field. And if when you have sensitive people, because your energy field becomes both a sender and a receiver. You can hear when people are thinking of you, and then they call you a second later. You can, you can feel it. It just pops up like a thought, like, oh. But if you train yourself, you recognize that, oh, so what I think is just luck or pure chance, or, well, I think about them all the time, is actually both your intuition speaking, and as you practice that more, you recognize that, oh, it is very real. Very Absolutely. Real. That's like going down the shamanic path. That's also like learning to pick in Reiki as well. You start to pick up on when you look even either distance healing Reiki or in person, you start to see things in them, and then suddenly you're like, and then you realize, oh, I actually see the real, I see the right thing.
Yeah.
But it's not with your regular eyes. It's sort of like an intuitive seeing from another part of you, you know?
Yeah. And that's, interesting too. I know for me, there's certain people in my life, like my mom has always been one of those people, but I have a couple other people, like I have a newer friend in my life right now that every time I think of her, within an hour, she'll text me. And I've thought of her a little bit more because of that, where, like, I'm just like, this is weird. I was just thinking of you. And then 2 days later, she pops into my head and I'm like driving or something. So I can't text her. So then an hour later, she's like, hey, what's going on, girl? How's your day going? And she's like, oh, I was just thinking of you, but I was driving and I couldn't text you. And then, 2 days later, she pops into my head again. And it's always like where I can't pick up the phone. And almost within an hour, every single time, there she is texting me. And it's like, either she's feeling me or I'm feeling her, or we're kind of just in that energy field together. But there's been patterns of very particular people in my life that common, thought process, energy exchange has happened with. And when we choose to connect into that more, and the only way that I would really say that you can do that is by connecting into yourself and removing the things that clutter our energy field. And that could be thousands upon thousands of things, right? Whether it's diet or lack of sleep or stress or a particular relationship can cloud your energy field. Technology obviously does. So many things that we can be distracted by. But noticing those patterns of, I call them like intuitive happenings, where you're just sensing things or predicting things, or these strange coincidences that are like too strange to actually be coincidence happen. Start tracking them, journaling them, maybe think about like, what was my energy state, energetic or emotional state during that period of time, before, during, and after it happened. There are certain patterns of my life, and then you can start to tap into deeper versions of that. But being patient and not having any expectations, I think, is definitely the biggest part to all of that. But anyways, we're going down a totally different path here. We could talk for hours about, I guess, telepathy, if you will, energy reading, energy connection, all of that.
But it's because when we look at, you look at the fish in the ocean and you see how you can be like, well, there's a fish over here, there's a fish over here. And in our world, we're like, yeah, and the water is kind of connecting them. They're kind of connected through the water. So if there's cold water over here, it's probably going to be kind of cold over there too, or maybe it's going to be a little warmer, but it'll shift and move. And we can see currents in the ocean, right? We can see it because we put things in it and moves. Well, what we don't understand is that around us, both there's the energy field of Earth Mother, which is an electromagnetic field, right? Very, very real. There's tons of layers of this electromagnetic field, and it's actually protecting us from getting sun particles, solar rays that are coming and would kill all life on Earth if it wasn't for this electromagnetic field. I forget the name of it, but there's a field. And but in this electromagnetic field, there's also other levels of energy frequencies. And these frequencies are what we are a part of. And we're connected through the energy. So just like the fish is connected to another fish through the water, we are connected to both through air. Air itself is an energy. Air itself carries a charge, and it's full of particles. It's full of particles, molecules, H2O. It's a lot. No, not H2O, O2. It's a lot. Like it's a O2 and then other, right? Like there's whatever. There's a lot of stuff in the air that for us, we're like, oh, it's empty. There's nothing here. I can't feel anything. I feel a little draft. But it's like water. If you were an alien coming to Earth, you would may be able to tell a little difference between water and air, but not that much. But for us, it's day and night because we die underwater. We can't breathe underwater. So for us, it's huge. So we think that there's nothing here, but there's a lot here that's charged with energy, both the air itself and then the electric charge that's everywhere.
I
And
mean,
that's,
just think about it going into, a higher elevation place with more oxygen, or a wooded area super far away from most civilization, definitely far away from big cities, just how different that air feels when you breathe it in, how differently it smells, how differently your body feels energetically when you're in that environment.
yep, yep. And what I found out when I wrote the book was that, mountains, just like the ocean, are full of what they call negative ions. And negative ions, which sounds like it should be negative for us, actually has a great, huge health impact on us. So, but of course, there's more to it, right? There's more to what makes us feel good in nature than just that we're breathing negative ions. Um, but that's a part of it, so that's why the air feels different, because it's full of this life-giving energy.
Yeah.
uh,
Crazy to think that most people would think, and I think you even mentioned this in your book, that most people would think, colonizers, when I say most people, colonizers, modern day city dwelling people,
yeah,
would think that people that live off of the earth and are that connected with the earth are not as intelligent, and they don't know what they're talking about. But having that connection with earth, and how you can just have insights with things that, a developer, a scientist might not even make the correlation with. It's just how powerful we are when we get back into the connection with our roots,
yeah,
and
yeah,
how
yeah,
disconnected we are from all of that.
yeah. Because that's, and if we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, this is a rabbit hole again.
Yeah.
But there's, when we talk about the matrix, it is about giving away your power and not listening to your intuition, not listening to your truth, what's inside of you. And because of how society has evolved, and because of everything that's going on in society, you're taught to listen. I mean, of course, we got to respect our parents. That's not a bad thing to do, right? But the way it's been framed is that, as a kid, you got to please your parents, and then you got to please the teachers in school, and you got to please your friends in school, and then you got to please a boss when you come out of school, when you're 20, 24, 25, and then you got to keep pleasing, and then a spouse, you got to please a spouse, and then you have kids, then you got to please those kids, because and it's just, no, we have given. And what happens when we try to please everybody around us is that we give away all our power.
Yeah.
So we
And
don't retain it.
it's even like the indoctrinations of schooling and religion and cultural norms and whatever else, right? What we are constantly taught to be, do, and how to act. And the pressure that puts on a lot of people, and how much healing we have to be responsible for, as adults, for ourselves. And I was actually just having this conversation with my dad this weekend, talking about every human being has trauma, regardless of whether we want to admit it or not. And he's like, I disagree. I don't have trauma. And I'm like, most people associate the word trauma with, an acute accident, this very well-known thing that happened in life, whether it could be war, right? Or a car accident, or an abusive parent. But sometimes our traumas become so normal, and maybe we see certain traumatic things play out in other families, or in the lives of others around us. So it just becomes this normal thing that it's not traumatic for us anymore. There's actually an interview with T.I. where he's talking about, there's like a home invasion, and a guy breaks into his house. His mom's tied up. He's tied up. He's 2 years old when this happens, and he remembers it. There's the home invasion. They get robbed, but he's explaining the story to, I think he was on like it was a news reporter or a radio station. He was explaining this, and the reporter was like, that's extremely traumatic. And he's like, no, it wasn't. And the reporter's like, yes, that is. And he's like, that was such a normal thing in my neighborhood growing up. Like, it happened to a neighbor down the street from us 2 weeks later, and it happened again 3 more times, throughout my life. It wasn't actually that traumatic. And it's like, but the reporter was like, yes, actually that is, although it was normal for you, and that's the environment that you grew up in, it's still traumatic. And so the way that we process traumas is very different. But the ways that we show up and live our life based on those traumatic events or that programming or that indoctrination or the pressure, like you were talking about earlier, that we're constantly under to be, do, or act in these certain ways, a lot of our responsibility as being our true authentic self is relearning who we actually are, not who we've been taught to be.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like that's where, your book comes in, where, I know that you mentioned that it might be more of an introduction, if you will, but I feel like this definitely lays the foundation. It's the groundwork for everything that we need to understand about ourselves as a human being, ourselves as one with all creatures and beings on earth, but also one with the actual soil and the trees and the oceans of earth, the air of earth. So I would highly recommend this book, especially, if whatever walk you are in your spiritual path, if you're just starting out, this is definitely a great place to begin. I would say I'm maybe in the middle. I'm not an expert. I would not consider myself an expert in this space. I'm still learning so many things every single day. But waking up to your book on a regular basis is a beautiful way to start the day. But it's also a beautiful way for me to reflect more about who am I really, and what is my connection and my purpose and my influence that I'm having in my life and in my environment and in my relationships, and then how am I showing up to do better for all of those things.
Wow, that's beautiful. There's so much love to you, Kael. So much love.
Yeah, thank you for writing this book and sharing it with us. I'm very proud of you, and I can't wait, whenever the next one comes out. I can't wait for this. This is book number 1 for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for book.
I'm working on one called The Healing Journey.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah, you're a phenomenal educator, writer, guide, friend, just everything. Marcus is amazing. So definitely check Marcus out. Your book is on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So The 4 Elements by Marcus Nobreus is on Amazon.
Nobreus, yeah.
Nobreus, sorry.
Get that wrong. The 4 elements, and then it usually it comes up as The 4 Elements We Are Earth Mother.
Perfect.
The subtitle comes up there too.
Say it one more time for us.
The 4 Elements We Are Earth Mother.
Beautiful. And then where can we find you on social media? Do you have your website? Tell us all the things.
So everything you can find me under is Healing with Marcus, and that would be on my website is www.healingwithmarcus.com, and the IG handle is Healing with Marcus, and on Facebook there's a Healing with Marcus as well. So I would love to connect with whoever is listening to this, because it's just nice to be a part of this growing experience that we are. Humankind is evolving, and it's beautiful to be a part of it.
Yeah. And he does daily meditations on Instagram too, which are, another beautiful way to wake up to Marcus daily. So he's a beautiful teacher and spiritual guide, and somebody who's influenced my life quite a bit over this last, I don't even think I've known you a year yet, but it feels like I've known you a couple lifetimes. So I'm grateful to have you back with me in this lifetime.
Me too. I'm very grateful
being here so much. I'm very appreciative of you sharing all your gifts with us.
Well, thank you, Kael. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you for lifting everybody's awareness and raising it the way you are.